Hi, we are ready with another episode of Founders Friday. Today I have got Mahek with me, who's the co-founder of Upliance. Though, of course, when we invested in Upliance, it was called React. And I'm going to go to you, Mahek, straight with that question as to React, Upliance, name change. It's often debated by, founders, both at a very early stage and, of course, sometimes later. So what was your reason?
So, we always loved the word appliance. It is actually one of our very early insights when early consumer who we were having like an interview with ended up saying that, hey, the appliance I own should level up my life. And that is the bar I set for home appliances. And that's when the word up sort of sat in our vocabulary. We always wanted the word appliance. We initially were called React Labs. While we were just sort of figuring out domains and trademarks for appliance. But the moment we had it, we pivoted right in because I think that name sits very well in terms of not only strategic things like recall, but has actually very organic origins in the story of React Labs or now Upliance.ai.
So to a founder who's starting up today and who's grappling with this name change sort of debate, what do you think, what would you advise those founders, that should you go ahead and do it, or if something is already sitting okay-ish, stay with it? Like, what do you think is the...
I would always say trust your gut is the right thing to do over here. If as a founder you're not happy with the name and you think there's a better name, it is going to eat at you, right? In the short term, it might be really hard. There's a lot of there might be a lot of credit associated with the brand that you will have to sort of explain. But I think your closest customers will come with you on your new brand journey, and it will give you an option to reset a lot of even the communication as you sort of go to a larger audience, into the early majority. So I wouldn't hesitate again, although we really like the word appliance. So we got to stick to it for a while.
Got it. So let's go to, the beginning of your journey. You and I, of course, discussed it before we invested, behind you and Mohit. But it'll be interesting to, for the listeners and, founders or people who are thinking of starting up today, to hear how you thought about it and why this category specifically.
So I think Mohit and me organically were very excited about hardware and home appliances in general because we generally builders. I think we built Mohit with Chai was building the chai machine, me spending a lot of time with Aether. We generally came out of both of those experiences brimming with confidence about building tech and hardware in India, and we were looking for the next big opportunity in that space, right? And at the same time we were focused. The other thing that we learned while doing tech at both Chayos and Aether was a lot about consumer, right? The multi-year journey over there gave us huge insights into how consumers think about brand, how consumers think about product, what is important, how do we do communication. Hence, when we were looking at starting up, the first thing we did was got 80 people who basically were in our broad TG. The broad TG we decided on very early on was homes where the oldest person is less than 45 years old, which is essentially nuclear families, young families in India, and see what is important to them. It became very clear early on in the conversations that there's a huge disparity between what they expect from appliances versus what they have. What we knew was technology already existed to build some of these product features that people were asking for. The challenge was to how do you create a category? How do you communicate a completely new way of cooking, for example, is what we chose with our first product. And once we sort of got a grapple of that,
which we got here.
Yeah. Once we got
in the background.
Once we got a grapple of that, it was very clear what we wanted to build and what the problem we were solving. We very quickly identified that people don't know how to cook, aspire to cook, and there is a huge gap over there, and that is a gap that the appliance fills today, using a combination of recipes and tech, right? Like something that is at the juncture of what is almost art and what is just like food science.
So, you and I again have had these conversations privately, but you've talked about about how hardware is really, really hard The hard is built into the word hardware. So as a startup, of all the things you could have done, given both your backgrounds, you both are engineers from IIT Bombay, so why specifically did you choose a more difficult path? I mean, again, you've seen Ather's journey. It's not been easy.
Right. So I think, there is some tendency to, like, there is a, propensity, I think both of us have to do hard things. And I think that's been something that has defined our early career. So that's something that we got, I think, used to very early on. But over time, what seemed like, hey, an intimidating thing to do, very quickly for at least me, became an unfair advantage, right? Like, hey, having been through the Ather journey, understanding what it takes to build hardware in India, it was not a big leap forward. And I do think that, we know something that a lot of other people don't know, that it's not that difficult to do hardware. Maybe it's our experience, or maybe it's just something that we figured out over time. But to build on that was essentially what we were excited about doing, and our experience allowed us to be really fast at it. So I think that way it's been relatively easy for us. But hardware continues to be hard. I have respect for every other hardware founder who essentially out there is building new products, because unlike software, unit economics are different. The amount of time and effort it takes to scale is different. But on the other hand, the payoffs are also much better, because it's very hard to replicate something that you are building fundamentally in hardware.
So what are you really building at Upliance? Like, what's the broader vision? Do you have a broader vision now? Or do you just want to take one step at a time, which is like one product at a time? Is that how you're building it?
So our vision in the long run is really clear. We think home appliances haven't seen the internet or the AI. Truly connected products do not exist. And that is what we want to build. Connected for us doesn't mean that all your home appliances necessarily talk to each other. But like, if you have an appliance in your house and I have an appliance in my house, they are talking to each other. Which means that if I figure out how to cook food A, if I figure out how to cook a new type of ramen, now everybody with the appliance knows how to do that. And that is a network effect that is untapped in the home appliances space. So that is what our overall vision is. Actually, the appliance is a great example of an implementation of this, right? Like, one of the first decisions we took was, hey, it has to have a touchscreen. There has to be an interface that is beyond knobs and dials. It has to be connected fundamentally, right? Like, the first versions of the appliance, even when we were shipping, only worked when you were online. The reason this completely changes what an appliance can do for you, and that is essentially been our product strategy. In the long run, we would want to do more and more products, but the thing with hardware is that, hey, we are learning how to build things modularly and investing in our key technologies. So for us, that's the firmware we write, the electronics we build, the interfaces we build inside, where hardware and software talk to each other, and of course all the stuff we do with cloud and AI.
But before you came out with the first sort of product, I mean, it's an very exciting product, and that is what got us to invest. There were a couple of other startups in this space, different way of trying to sort of solve the same problem. I don't know where they are in their journey, and then now some others have also come up, some other startups. So how do you see that? Were you not fazed by the fact that they didn't see the sort of revenue climb that a startup is expected to have? And how do you feel about so many more other founders trying to solve this problem from different angles maybe, but really the outcome would be the same, right?
Fair. So I think what one of the core things we understood very early on, and which continues to be a huge part of our product philosophy, is we understood that, hey, people that cook today, or at least young Indians that cook today, cook because they want to, not because they have to, right? And that means that they're cooking because it is a part of their identity, it is something that they want to do, it is something they want to invest in, right? So when somebody cooks, they're investing in their health, they're investing in the health of their families, and that is an important part of what you want to deliver. Actually, robotic food or food made out of machines is something that people take a step back from. We actually did physical tests, right? Like we had like the same same food created by a human being and put it in front of somebody and said, hey, this was made by a robot, this was made by a human being, they take a taste, they don't like the one made by the robot, because there's something fundamentally different about like robotic food. So on day one, we've essentially said, hey, we are never going to build a robotic food appliance, right? What we are going to build is that, hey, you want to cook, I'm going to build the right technology to get you to cook. It's going to be an assistant, and it will get you rapidly onto your culinary journey rather than, step by step. Rather than like press a button and, it literally prints food. So I think that is somewhere we are very different from any competition that we have or any startup that's sort of been in this space. This essentially differentiates us from anybody else out there.
So tech startups particularly ask this question that, what is your right to win? Can't Google do the same thing? Can't Microsoft? Did you get asked that question when you were trying to raise, your last rounds? Do people say, oh, Samsung can do this and LG can do this, so what's your right to win? Do you get asked that question?
Well, I do, and my answer is actually very simple, right? Like, yes, they could have done this, they know what we know, but they have not been doing it because it's fundamentally, products are fundamentally changing, right? Let me give you a simple example, right? Any home appliance company today, their relationship with their customer ends when they sell the appliance to the distributor, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've sold you an appliance. Now, if we are talking as a brand, there is actually something that's gone wrong. There is service, there is warranty or something like that. Our relationship with the customer starts the day you buy the appliance, right? You log in, now we are helping you through your culinary journey. There is a lot going on over there. And then that actually allows us to fulfill our promise of we will level up your life, right? And that I think that approach is what I do not think traditional business models of like, brand distributing product is very conducive to. And that's essentially what we're building.
But did that question irritate you when investors asked you that question?
Well, there are a lot of questions that irritate me.
Tell me all the questions that irritated you that investors asked.
I do see the merit in that question, right? Like investors think of this as a tech advantage, and I think our tech advantage, more than the actual technology which we build, which is very core and very in depth, is also the speed at which we build it at, right?
And frugally. I mean, you didn't use much money for it.
Exactly. So both of these things put us at an advantage. And actually, what we actively talk about is what hardware companies can learn from software companies. Launch a product, learn from your customers, get look at real feedback, and make decisions basis that. So when we launched the appliance, it had 12 recipes. All of them were pastas. It was really a pasta maker, right? Like our customers just making pasta over and over again. And then slowly we added rice, then we added Indian sabzis, then we added continental, and now we are like 500 plus recipes, AI generation, etc. So so that incremental step, actually, I don't think a lot of companies do, right? Like they actually complete a product and they're like, okay, now we've launched this product. Actually, that's also something fundamentally different we did. And if I have to do it again, I will do it all over again exactly the same way.
So how did Indian investors react? That was not a pun, by the way, unintentional use of word. When you were raising and you raised pre-launch, and then you also raised after you launched. So how was your experience? And again, I'm not looking for names, but I think it'd be useful for, again, other founders to see how do you tackle both interest or lack of interest depending on which stage, you meet VCs. So if you want to talk a little bit about that. So
I think when we started the company, we chose we are going to do two things, hardware and B2C. Both of these things were hardware eliminates like I think 70% of the investors is there on the list, and then the 30% left are like, oh, B2C, so I'm going to go. So I have a sliver, but I think more than that, what I've realized over time, and I think the little bit of help I was doing, a little bit of work I was doing at Aether with the founders over there, fundraising gave me that insight. Was that there is always like depth to stories, right? Like and the right investor will always spend more time with the founder, spend more time with the product, and will essentially and that is what will build conviction. So I think my strategy on day one was to, instead of basically just like, sending decks around and like pitching would be to essentially identify, identify people who might resonate with it. And there are a few like lines I will clearly draw, right? Like for example, even so since day one, right? Like one of the conversations I will have is that, hey, young India wants to cook, and they would, and hence there's a market for this product, right? At the price points that we want to do that. And if you fundamentally do not believe that as an investor, I will very happily walk away. That's actually the first thing I will establish in my first meeting, right? And then it's like, hey, if this doesn't work out, there is no bridge you can cross. I can't prove this to you. Surprisingly, a lot of investors respect that, and that's essentially got me to the real quality conversations that I eventually did. The other thing that is common across all the investors I have on my cap table is that they were almost customers first, right? Like they spent a lot of time with the product, and our product did the talking beyond a point. And I think that is also the second thing that was important, right? Like we were very quick to build a product, and instead of like just like, hey, we will build this, we had something that we could show at whatever scale. So those two things.
But was it frustrating at any point? Were there any questions which you feel that investors can do better when they ask founders?
So I think, was it frustrating? Yes, fundraising is a hard process, and that every founder must go through. And I think every founder underestimates the time to put in this aspect of the business, right? Like even after explicitly being told, I think I put very little time. But and there are questions, right? Like there literally a question that will just in an investor meeting trigger me at words like that. Hey, this is I don't know why we are going. Not necessarily one of them is, hey, why is somebody not going to replicate it? But it would be questions like of the nature of like, hey, nobody wants to cook. How is this ever going to scale? I'm like, hey, why did we even have the first meeting whatsoever?
Nobody's going to cook. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this is fundamental. Wow. In fact, like every house has a kitchen, and every kitchen must become smart over the next 10-15 years. So like we can't have that debate, right? Yeah. So then we're like, hey, okay, we will.
Are these all men? Male investors saying this?
Well, like the ratios in this will make it probably, make it mostly true, but it's been both ways.
Okay, all right. Yeah. And any other questions that, and any sort of tip do you think? Because, I think of the founders we've had on this series, I think you were one of the earliest we put, capital behind, and like I said, you were pre-launch. So your journey is a little bit more still close the early days. So I just want to, is there any tips you want to give to new founders who are starting out as to how do they sort of get that first set of investors? Launch a product. That is what you should do. Whatever stage your product is at, you will be surprised if the problem that you're solving is truly a problem. Like at 10% of a product, you should have like customers who are going to be like, hey, I love this product, right? Sure, there are lots of places where there is improvement and people understand this. Actually, the first probably 100 customers we had for the appliance were these people. Like most of them bought the product when we were at proto stage, and till date are like the most prolific cookers on the appliance, right? Like so. That is one thing that I would definitely tell any founder who is thinking, and whether it's B2B, B2C, right? Like you're eventually building some form of product, and having like an early version of that with very clear like hey, this is how this is going to grow. Like it's not only investors. I think your consumers will believe you because now a lot of tech companies have seen. Exponential growth and more features coming in, products becoming better with time. So what's next? Do you have a product pipeline you want to discuss, or you want to keep surprising, or is it too far out? Do you want to just focus? Again, what's the roadmap for this early journey?
So I think with the appliance, we have just gotten started. We've only recently started our scale. We put our first ad out, so it's very early days for us. So for the next 18 months, we're going to be focused on the appliance. Most people still haven't heard about it, and we have to word of mouth is quick, but not quick enough yet, right? So that's essentially our focus for the next little bit. I think we have a team that can develop products very quickly, right? So I'm not worried about hey, if we decide we will do more products in the future, and when we decide to do that, we will follow the same playbook. Build prototypes quickly, launch early products into the market, and then learn from the market. But today we are essentially going to be focused on distribution and distribution and brand building, right? These are two things that I think are important at the growth stage of the company, and it's important that it's both external and internal. Like the company internally gets behind it and externally get behind it, and if we sort of hit that, then sky is the limit going forward.
How has hiring been for you? Has it been tough? Again, pre-launch, post-launch, like what do you see is your biggest challenge? Is it fundraising, hiring, product acceptance? What is it?
So, as a founder, hiring is one of the key things. So, I think after fundraising, or arguably alongside fundraising, it's the maximum amount of time founders should spend time on, and I may not have, but that's one place where, in retrospect, I would wish I would spend more time on. I think it's only now, and we are 3 years into founding, React Labs. Is that only now we have a team where I think I'm confident that hey, this team can like execute on plans. They understand the brand well, they understand the product well. Now, like for example, our AI and product team is just creating new features that like surprise me once in a while, and I'm scratching my head. Hey, how do I the marketing team spending more time? How do I position this to customers rather than developing the product? So I think it's been a tough journey to find the right people, but now since we have the right people, the scale is great, right? Like we and now we are able to do things much quicker, and now we have a much larger scale as well, right? Like we have like now thousands of customers, and once we have that kind of scale, there is also and we continue to help our customers today, right? Like so, there's a button you can press. You can go here and you can say call me, and it will instantly call like a chef, right? And you can ask any question you want, right? Like saying I was cooking XYZ, and we're essentially scaling that. And today we don't even like it's a real person answering that, right? Like we're literally training.
How are you scaling that?
Well, we're scaling that by having a great team. I think randomly some person in our office's phone rings, and they're able to coordinate internally very quickly with chefs and non-chefs, depending on what issue that they're facing. But now you will see more and more. You can actually like but all of this is helping us train the AI. Right, so now you can just go pick a recipe and say, "Hey, I want to, I want to make this vegan. I want to make this low oil," and it'll just make the changes. And these changes are not things that the AI has dreamt up, right? These are things that real queries that people have put that we have written down like on an Excel sheet and that we've used to sort of train the AI. So while it is a great customer experience to have this ability, it actually improves the product for everybody. So it's well worth putting in this effort to do this despite our scale.
Got it. Now this is the segment where you ask me questions, so whatever you want to ask.
Oh, so since what I don't know, so I know our side of the story, which is very early on I came and did a little bit of a demo for you guys. You all kept a product and you all were cooking in the office. I know that, but what? Like apart from product, what was your conviction building system beyond the product for us?
It's for us. It's always the founders. I think I felt a great sense of comfort with you. We met first. I met Mohit afterwards, and then it was a similar kind of comfort with Mohit. I think one thing I find sometimes missing in when we talk to founders is the ability to have a more critical sort of conversation, conversation based on critical thinking. I think founders want to present something to you and then they expect as an investor that either you say yes or no. And, life is not like that, right? So investment cannot be like that. So there are shades of gray. And I think that nuance that you were able to, if you recall, we discussed about your GTM. We discussed, is India your market? Because at that time, since you were pre-launch, it was a worthwhile conversation to have, or should it be overseas? Is it the, Indian community overseas who will, send it with their kids who are going to college? We had all that conversation. And what was interesting was that, and I had, different conversations with Mohit on the product itself. And what was interesting for me was that you guys didn't really get defensive or didn't just want to talk on a prepared script, which means that you really know your product, you've really done the thinking, and you understand that it's a work in progress. It's not a fully finished, otherwise you would not be a startup, right? I mean, it's like me going and telling LG that, oh, now this spec, maybe I can go tell them that, right? But they have a different process, but the whole point of building ground up is that you will get feedback. Now, whether you take it, I mean, whether you implement it is a different issue. I think both you and Mohit had that maturity, and that really worked.
Oh, okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Do you recall those conversations?
I do, and I think, and I think I do remember them, and this is something Mohit and me also spoke about. These were questions that were different from most like follow-up conversations that people go into, right? Like, and that's a good experience for us as well, because usually I think. It's a combination of using the product and having these deep conversations that even gives us comfort that, hey, you know, there is a, you know, beyond the financial investment, there's a partner here who we can, like, you know, ping on at times and basically say, hey, what do you think about XYZ?
So, you know, when you were doing that soft launch event in Bangalore and I came for it, and again, what I liked was, I think by that time we had already invested, I think, but irrespective, what gave me again, you know, it was really interesting that you guys were very open. The customers, your customers were there. You know, people were milling around, and again, there's a lot of openness then. This is, to my mind, is what is building in, you know, full public glare kind of a thing, right? So again, that between, you know, there's a little bit of innocence and confidence. And that's very important for their early stage journey. Otherwise, you know, if you're very closed and everything is very closed, and it's not about, I mean, I don't think we even spoke too much because you guys were very busy. Both you and Mohit were very busy that day, and your team was very busy. But just the fact that you were okay for an investor to just generally hang around, you know, a lot of times founders feel that, oh my God, you know, we have to present a perfect face to the investor. So again, you guys had that, I think both, like I said, innocence and confidence. I don't know which of the two, or maybe it's a mixture of both.
We don't know either. I'm fine with whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think, so one of the things that we literally have written in our brand document is essentially do not hold a facade. It will fall down and it will fail, right? We cannot behave like a Samsung or an LG. We will fail at that, right? Which is why we have like a very honest communication with our customers as well, right? Like when we launch the product, we have only 12 recipes. More will come. This will come. In fact, somebody in PR just gave me like a rap on my hand saying that, hey, why did you go in public and say that, you know, at some point of time our recipes would be rated 3-star or 2-star all the time? I'm like, no, that was true. We have changed that, right? Like earlier, like our customers were very patient. They were like, this turned out really badly. Now I'm ordering food from Swiggy. But but it's still, that's important because firstly, their confidence continued with us and we would accept that feedback. And I think that plays a huge role in building consumer confidence, I think.
So, you know, when we bought for the office this machine and you added Deepak to the WhatsApp group, of customers. And again, I was like, wow, like there's so much transparency. Again, you know, founders talk a lot about being transparent to investors, but this was really, you know, proof of the pudding was that, so Deepak is constantly seeing what other customers are saying, whatever that feedback, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. And again, I think it requires a lot of confidence to be able to be that open.
Yeah, I think it was an insane decision in retrospect, but it seemed obvious at that time to put all our owners on a single WhatsApp group. Today it's paid off. I think it's become a part of the product. So I think when people buy, they join the group and it's almost like it's a part of the experience.
Yeah. That's how you build a community actually, organically, without having to pay people to come and, you know.
Exactly. So it has a payoff, right? Like in that sense, and I'm glad we chose to do it, right? Like earlier it was just like, hey, we need a way to communicate with our owners, but now I think it's become way more beyond that.
You call them owners, not customers. Every time you've said owner and not customer.
Yes, because we have a relationship with them, right? Like an owner of an appliance, we want to level up their life, so we are continuously working with them. And they have invested in us, right? Like, so that's actually one more consumer insight we had early on. So if you look at what is the difference between like my parents' generation and my generation is that when they say invest, right? It's like we're going to invest in some gold, we've invested in some shares. Now, if you look at a younger audience in India, they think we're going to invest in health, we're going to invest in wellness, right? So most people, when they buy the appliance, they think of it as an investment, and we completely agree, which is why you own an appliance, right? Like you're not a customer for us.
Got it. Any other question you got for me?
Is there like at any point through our journey, and we've been the founders together for almost 2 years now. What has there have obviously been lots of ups, but there have also been downs, hard quarters, etc. What's your how do you see typical ups and downs in?
Again, when you've seen enough startup journeys, you know that there are going to be lots of downs and there are going to be ups. It takes a while. I mean, I think the closest analogy, and I think that's probably the most correct analogy for a startup, is really, the seed to a full-grown tree, oak tree, or whatever you may want to call it, is really the most apt, is what I feel. So when a tree sort of is a sapling, it's not the most sturdy or robust, because you've planted an oak seed, so it'll be sturdy one day, but it's not when at different points of its journey. So I think startups, as an investor in startups, you've got to accept that. But I make this point very frequently, so I'll make it one more time. Even when you look at large companies, their journey is not linear. There is no such thing that if you've done 1,000 crore top line this year, next year you'll be doing 1,200 or 1,500 crore top line, right? And you look at the biggest behemoths, whether it's, a lot of people believe that when Facebook transitioned and called themselves Meta, it was a misstep. Mm-hmm. It didn't give them. That whole metaverse thing didn't play out as I think what they had anticipated. So it is part and parcel of building a business, whether you're large or small. So at least I'm not very fussed about it, but I think what is important is to at least try and understand what could have led to it, because ultimately you do have to stem, you can't let it slide all the way down. So is it that there's a problem with the product? Is the strategy not working? Is it pricing, channel? There are so many things that have to come together for a startup to really become a large company. So for us, therefore, it's important to have that conversation. But also, ultimately, we are led by the founder's confidence in what they're doing. And if you have already analyzed, and again, it's a lot about how reflective is the founder. So if a founder has the ability to introspect, to really try and again, not either be completely Panglossian in their head that everything is rosy and everything will always be rosy and this is just a blip, or of course not too depressive either, that oh my god it's all over and kind of sort of you hold your head and sort of start wailing and weeping. So it's important to understand and analyze, and that's again one of the key, to my mind, that's the biggest tool to your success. Not so much as fundraising is, but this ability to reflect and course correct if need be. And then sometimes there are macro factors which are adverse. Okay. And that's true for everyone, right? Big companies, small companies, irrespective of the category you're in. So again, you roll with those punches, because if there's a larger macro that is adverse, what can you do about it, right? Again, as a great founder will always try and figure things out. But in the short term, you will get hit by a adverse macro situation. That's how we think about bad quarters and low phases. Fundraising is hard, so sometimes it takes longer, sometimes you get lucky. So it's, I think, part and parcel of building a company. Okay. And if you're not up for it, you should not be an investor. Short. That's my short answer.
Fair, and I think that goes for founders as well, right? Like it's going to be tough right there. But I'm glad, and I think even both the founder and investor community in India is growing at a rapid pace. So I think there is a lot of awareness of this that's sort of seeping in, at least in young funds and young companies. So I'm actually personally very optimistic about that.
No, you have to be, because if you think, if you're going to paint a very rosy picture all the time, either to your customers or to your investors, or even if you're deluded in a sense, I think you're going to lose out in the long run. And this is a long game. It's not a short game. So you've got to be very self-aware. You've got to be ready to be up for the next day's challenge, no matter how hard the previous day might have been.
Fair.
So thank you so much, Mahek. But before we go, one last question. What's your favorite recipe on Upliance?
My favorite recipe of late on the Upliance, there is a potato leek soup that one of our customers put in. that like me and my wife have been growing fond of. But obviously, the first recipe we cooked on the appliance has some special. There's a mushroom risotto that I really like. Pav bhaji is a constant favorite. So these three are probably ones that I'm right now cooking.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on Founders Friday. And
Thank you for having me.
All the best.